Hello everyone, welcome to my channel about writing stuff. My name is Camille and today we're talking all about query letters. Woo! Okay, so since there's so much information about query letters online already, I'm just going to give you sort of my go-to formula on how I summarize my story, and then I'm going to jump into some of the things that people don't really talk about when it comes to query letters and things like this. I'm going to try and cover like the gambit of writing your query letter and submitting your query letter to agents, so bear with me, this might be a long video. So for anyone who doesn't know, which I doubt, but if you don't know what a query letter is, it's basically a cover letter. It's a one-page cover letter you are submitting to an agent or a publisher to entice them to want to read your book and then hopefully represent you or buy it or whatever. And when I say one page, I mean one page. Your query letter should not be longer than one page. It's not a synopsis. It is not a summary. It is a pitch. 3 paragraphs max should be like the whole of your letter. But yeah, so first part of your query letter is the pitch. You want to go right into the pitch because that's business. That's, what you're sending what you're emailing the agent for and why the agent's reading your emails, because I want to know if they like the concept of your story. So, formula for summarizing your big, huge novel that you put all this work into. Character, conflict, stakes. There you go. You're welcome. It's that simple. People say that summarizing your book is hard, which it can be, but basically, pick one character. Pick that one central main character, especially if you have like an ensemble cast thing going on or if you have multiple POVs going on. Pick one central character. What is the conflict? And then, if they don't do if the character doesn't do what they're trying to do, what could go wrong? What are the stakes? And any book can be summarized into a couple sentences. Pretty much any book can be summarized into one sentence. It's Lord of the Rings. When Frodo learns that his uncle's ring actually belongs to the Dark Lord Sauron, he must traverse the dangerous lands between the Shire and Mordor and cast the ring into the fiery pit, and if he doesn't, Sauron will take the ring back and take over the world. That was a really long run-on sentence, but you get the idea. It's, you want to be short, you want to be direct, you want to be professional, and you want to be honest. That's really important. Just tell the agent, literally, this is my character. And when this happens, this stuff happens, and if it goes wrong, then this bad shit can happen, whatever. Easy peasy. And a couple problems I had when I tried to write queries and pitches for my first couple of novels, I ran into some problems where it was really difficult to summarize my story. Not because it's hard in general. The reason I had problems summarizing my stories is because the first book that I wrote and the second book that I wrote did not have conflict and they did not have stakes. I've talked about this before, but essentially my first book that I wrote, I had like 3 different POVs and there were like a bunch of different subplots going on, and it was like, I told myself that I was writing a character story. It was about the character interactions. It was kind of like a 3-way fictionalized memoir, whatever. The problem with that, though, is that there was no overarching plot. There were elements missing from the story, and therefore there was really no conflict. There were no stakes, and this had a lot to do with the fact that I was a brand new writer. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know how to make small things feel important, so important to the character that they felt important to the reader. And that's a really good tell when you're writing your query letter. If you're finding it like impossible to summarize your story in your query letter, if you're finding it really hard to summarize your story into like 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs, there could be something fundamentally wrong with the tale you're trying to tell. And that's not a bad thing. That is you are learning thing. But if you come across this issue where, you don't know what the conflict is, or you don't know what the core conflict is, you don't know what the stakes are, you don't know what your inciting incident is, you don't know what your character's internal struggle is, things like this, then I would advise you to do one of two things. The first one is to go back and revise and actually turn your story into a story. Number two is put it away. Throw it in a trunk somewhere and write something brand new. But I've talked about this before already. So getting back to the query letters, it's formulas work for a reason. But then we get into this realm of, well, what if you are writing a series? Or what if you are writing this type of fictionalized memoir story? And these are rare stories, but when they're done well, they're done really well. It's, Farseer by Robin Hobb, Kingkiller, Patrick Rothfuss, the Cushiel series by Jacqueline Carey. All of these books are like fictionalized fantasy stories of just really awesome people's lives. There really is no overarching plot for these stories. It's a bunch of subplots and this really cool character doing really cool shit. And like the conflict and the tension we get in these stories are little things. It's, with Fitz, it's, he doesn't get to see Molly nosebleed, and it's devastating to the reader, even though it's kind of a small thing. Or Kingkiller, it's Quoth doesn't have enough money to pay tuition and get a new shirt, and we're devastated because it's very important to Quoth. I was going to do an example for Phaedra, but anyways. So it's, how do you pitch that kind of story if you're writing this sort of very character-centric story? Then focus on character. This is a story about this character who yada, yada, yada. You could talk about the world. That's very prevalent, especially in these fantasy memoir style fiction stories. So focus on character, world, and then inciting incident. That is one thing that is prevalent in all of these stories. And it's usually the orphan thing. I just realized that. For Phaedra, it's like her mom sells her to the house. And then for Fitz, it's his grandpa gives him away to his dad. And then, Quoth's parents die. So anyways, if you want to write this character-centered story, give them new parents or make them an orphan, apparently. God, I'm on a tangent. Okay, so if you're having problems summarizing your book, there could be something fundamentally wrong with your story. So just keep that in mind. So after you finish with that paragraph or two paragraphs of, hi, agent, this is what my story is about, and it's super interesting and super intriguing, and blah, blah, blah. You want to go into the stuff that lets the agent know that you're not an idiot. And that is knowing your genre, your word count, knowing like the market, like where would your book be on the shelf? And that correlates with your word count. You should not be pitching a 200,000 word young adult novel to anybody, ever. Don't do it. Most YA books over 100,000 words being pitched to agents are probably going to be automatically rejected because that's considered too long. So just, know the market, understand these numbers because they are important. So genre, word count, you can talk about the themes, if it's own voice, diverse, these things are important. Is your story a standalone? Is it a sequel, or is it a standalone with sequel potential, or is it a series? Do you have an ensemble cast? Whatever. Just know like the market and parameters around your book. Understand where it would be shelved in store. That way you can, approach this agent in this letter and be like, I've done my research. I'm not dumb. Please don't think I'm dumb. Yeah. So you want to get that shit right. Okay. And then the last thing you can do in your query letter is creds and personalization. Now, for those of us who don't have credentials, this part blows. Like, I would love to, at the end of my query letters, be like, I've been published in this short story magazine, or I got this credential, or I got something. My God, something. Hasn't happened yet. So what I do instead is I personalize every query letter. Before I start querying, I do my research. I go to manuscriptwishlist.com. I look for fantasy agents or contemporary agents or whatever genre I'm writing in. And I read their manuscript wish list, and then I have an Excel document with agent name, agency name, that's important, what they specifically like. And then I have a fourth column that I fill in later. So I fill in all this stuff. Do not query 2 agents from the same agency at the same time. That's another thing that will tell the agent that you don't know what you're doing. So the fourth column is I look up interviews with every single agent I think would like my story. And I read the interviews or I watch the interviews and I pick out the little tidbits that I really enjoyed or things that they said that really resonated with me or things that I appreciate. And it could be anything from their tastes to their hobbies or how they exist inside their agency or how they, run their agency if they are the founder. It's connecting on a personal level, because if this agent decides to represent you and take you on, guess what? You guys will have a working relationship forever. So you want to make sure you do your research and that you are submitting to people you would actually want to be tethered to for the rest of your career. That's very important. Very important. Okay, so that's what I do. Since I don't have credentials, I do a small paragraph at the end. I found you through 88 Cups of Tea or, Writer's Digest or whatever. Just I found your interview. I loved what you said about yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. Last line. Thank you for your time and consideration if you want, but you want a nice, genuine thank you right there for your time, because guess what? Agents don't get paid unless they sell your book. So they are literally reading your query letter for free. Yes, they're reading your query letter for free. Telling you, So be respectful, professional, straightforward, honest. Don't use gimmicks. If you write your query letter in first person, you're awful. Don't do it. Just subtle is better. Subtle and honest and professional is better. So just do those things. And the last thing I want to talk about really quick is don't get upset about rejections. I have a rejection sucks video, which I will link up in the thingy bopper. But basically what I want to talk about is, these agents don't make money until they sell books. And it's a lot easier to sell a gem. It's a lot easier to sell a book that is fresh and unique and has all of the elements, all the things, or, there's just nostalgia and they're just like, I have to have this book. And no one feels that way about every single book. So, once you get your 100 rejections, 200 rejections, remember that it's okay. You just keep writing, keep revising, keep submitting, and sooner or later, someone will love your book and want to take you on. So that's all I have for you guys today. Good luck with your querying. Next week, we'll talk about other stuff and stuff. I think I'll link some stuff in the description box, like Query Shark and Query Tracker and all those necessary tools for us query folk. So I'll see you guys next week. But for now, as always, you should be writing stuff.